can make our way to our seats. All right, I'll now call this meeting of the Committee of the Whole to order at 6:01 p.m. We'll take a moment of silence. Oh, yeah, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Do we do that before the roll? Yep, we're going to do that before the roll tonight. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the coordinator please call the roll?
Ms. Pearson?
Present.
Mr. Rollins?
Here.
Ms. Mohammed?
Here.
Mrs. McCulloch?
Here.
Mr. Segal?
Here.
Mr. Connor?
Here.
Ms. Stanford?
Here.
With 7 present, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Before we go any further, thank you, Connor. Connor Childers works behind the scenes to produce the board's broadcast on Channel 20. I'd also like to take a moment to remind everyone to please hold your questions until after each of the presentations. There are meeting minutes from May 31st. You should have had a chance to look at those before we got here, so if there are any changes, corrections, or additions, I would entertain those now. Seeing none, I'll ask for a consensus to approve. Yes, thumbs up, yes, yes. Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to Internal External Stakeholder Committee. Ms. Pearson, is it, okay. Ms. Pearson will now lead the Internal External Stakeholder Committee portion of the meeting.
Thank you, Jude. Due to unforeseen circumstances, Ms. Hughes is unable to present on tonight, but there will be a presentation at a later date. So on Friday, the graphic shown for the monthly agenda for the stakeholder committee is for the next year is present there. And you should also be able to find it in board docs or via email. On Friday, June 17th, 8 high school students were honored at the Rockford Association for Minority Management, aka RAM. 41 Scholar Awards. The mission of RAM is to promote excellence in African American youth and professionals in the community by providing programs inclusive of diverse education and cultural opportunities. Started in May 1980, RAM seeks to correct the lack of diversity in business management and address the needs to invest resources in helping gifted minority high school students pursue college education. 21 of 28 students were from RPS 205. And I must say, if I can call some names, Mr. Parker, Ms. Keffler, the Jefferson president, Mr. Rundo was sitting there like a proud parent as students were awarded. So congratulations to all this year's recipients. Coming up July 15th is Roosevelt Summer School graduation. For more information about attending this event, please contact Laura Fromm. We would like to express thanks to our board members who attended the high school graduations and give a special shout out to June Stanford for representing the board at numerous year-end recognition ceremonies for staff and volunteers. Now, please enjoy the video recapping this year's graduation ceremonies.
My message to all of you is keep pushing forward no matter what life throws at you. Find
Find your chance. I am personally so proud of each and every one of you because you have overcome those barriers and taken your chance. You are all amazing.
Success and accomplishments at the sacrifice of relationships and experiences mean nothing. Doesn't matter if you have the nicest car or the nicest house, if it comes at the cost of sacrificing relationships and experiencing life.
Believing in yourself will get you further than you ever thought possible. Reach for the stars, and there's nothing you can't do. If you need proof, look at where you're sitting right now. You did it. We did it. We are the future, and our dreams aren't just dreams anymore. Our dreams were made today.
There is just as much to learn in failure as there is in success. We all fail frequently, just as I'm sure you all have done. I'm here today to tell you that that will never change. But what does change is how you view failure. In this life, you'll fall flat on your face, and I urge each of you to lean into your screw-ups and ask yourselves what can be learned here. Embrace your passion, whatever it may be. I believe that each of us has something that we're gifted with, but in my life, I rarely see in people that are willing to try new things. How can we expect our passions to find us if we continue to do what everybody else around us does?
Be the person who brings others together, who lifts them up when they're down, someone who encourages others to be the best versions of themselves. Always strive to be your best self, because in the long run, what you put out into the world will come back to you.
We have pushed each other to new heights and limits that by ourselves we could not have achieved. We've introduced each other to new ways of thinking, experiences, perspectives, and we are who we are today because of each other.
We cannot control what events occur or what roadblocks may come into our way, but what we can control is how we respond to these roadblocks. As we all step into the next chapters of our own stories, we will continue to face challenges. I can assure you that there will be more bumps along the road. Now that you have a taste of success, look for it, chase it. Be ready to respond to challenges that look to alter your view. By being here today, you have shown that you can do it once. Now hold yourself and the others around you accountable. Put in the extra effort on that assignment. Make changes in your community. Fight for that cause. Get your dream job and aspire to be the best versions of yourselves. Let's make a real difference. Let's get back to work.
At this time, please move your tassel from the right to the left. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my honor to introduce class of 2022.
Thank you, Connor, for such a nice video. Congratulations are in order for the 205 Vibe. This year, our PS 205 communication team submitted 8 award entries for consideration to the National School Relations Association and earned a clean sweep with top honors on all 8 entries. The highest recognition of Publication and Digital Media Award of Excellence was given for several of our podcasts, videos, newsletters, templates, blog posts, and our bus commercial. For a detailed list, visit the 205 Vibe on our website. Congratulations and job well done. The top item for last week was the top item for last week was from the news. Our PS 205 teacher agreed to 4-year contract. This week's top item from the blog, Auburn High School ROTC team competes in National Academic Bowl Championship by Christopher McMullen. In our featured blog post, thank you RPS 205 retirees, you will see the faces and names of all the teachers and staff who retired from Rockford Public Schools this year. As a reminder, please watch on the screen as Connor navigates to the 205 Vibe and this particular blog post on our website. Thank you, teachers and staffs, for your years of commitment to our students and their families. Legislative news. School management groups and the Illinois State Board of Education have worked together for years to try and discourage the General Assembly by putting any more mandates on Illinois school districts. And these efforts are finding success as the number of mandate bills have decreased dramatically in the last few sessions. We've given you a list of current mandates that are in the works. There shouldn't be many more mandates added to this list unless they involve student safety. For more information, please visit illinois.gov. Our first summer sports camp were a huge success, partnering with the Rockford Park District, thanks to an ARP ESSER grant. Over 700 RPS 205 elementary and middle school students were able to spend 2 to 3 weeks learning the fundamentals of volleyball, basketball, and wellness conditioning. RPS 205 basketball, volleyball, tennis, track, and cross-country coaches, along with several high school athletes, ran the drills and led the instruction. At the volleyball and basketball camp, the students were taught fundamentals with skills, drills, and tournaments. The wellness conditioning camp taught nutrition, strength, and speed, football, tennis, track, and cross-country. We are looking forward to including more sports, more students next year. On Wednesday, June 22nd, the football team and coaches from RPS 205 high schools came together for a camp hosted by Chicago Bears. In addition to running the camp, the Chicago Bears donated $2,500 to each high school football team. Thank you, Chicago Bears. Please remember to check the board calendar on board docs for opportunities and events. I stand to be corrected. One moment, please. Chicago Bears check presentation. My apologies. Thank you, Mr. Earl. So again, please check the board docs, calendar on board docs for opportunity and events. This month, we're highlighting the RPS Golf Scramble to be held on Friday, July 22nd. Put together a foursome and support Rockford Public Schools at Aldine Golf Course. For more information, contact Abby Campton at abigail.compton@rps205.com. Thank you. That concludes internal, external stakeholder.
Are there any questions? I do. Do we have a drone now? Does the district, I mean because that was way cool. Well done. All righty. Thank you, Ms. Pearson. Ms. Stanford will now lead the Performance and Monitoring Committee portion of the meeting.
Thank you. We have 3 items in our committee report tonight. 2 donations to the district and the semi-annual report on ARP-ESSER expenditures. First, Smart Tech would like to donate a new smart board to the district. Mrs. Susan Urim, EdTech Director, is asking the board to accept this donation. If you recall, a board was damaged last year at McIntosh Elementary School. At that time, to quickly ensure continuity of learning for students, the administration sent a board from the 4th floor in the central office to the school. This donation will replace that board and be used for demonstration and professional learning purposes. Second, Athletic Director Dawn Williamson is asking the board to accept a donation of $10,000 or $2,500 per high school to conduct Chicago Bears Gatorade Junior Training Camp, which included 2 non-contact football technique workshops, which were conducted on June 22nd at Clarence Hicks Memorial Sports Park. Are there any comments or questions about these donations? Okay, next, Dr. Greg Brown and other cabinet members will present the current progress of the district's investment in ESSER funding with a focus on ARP-ESSER. Dr. Brown, it's all yours.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to wait for Connor to pull it up here. Here we go. So I'm just going to kind of run you through all 3 of the grants, just as a kind of a reminder of all the money that we've gotten through all the CARES Act, and then we'll focus specifically on the big one, which is ARP-ESSER. So first slide is really just talking about what we are trying to accomplish with all this money, continuing to extend time and growing our community partnerships, which you'll see some examples of, extending time by improving our facilities, operations, and ITIS, and then maximizing time by renewing, supporting, and developing staff. So we're reporting back, as you know, we do this on a semi-annual basis. We do it in January, and then we do it in July. You'll see that we're really starting to spend quite a bit of the money now in ARP-ESSER. We've got a lot of it contracted for. We haven't paid a lot, but we've got a lot of it at least contracted for. So this is an overall summary of the 3 tiers of money that we got. The first one was the one that came out initially in March of 2020. That was really primarily all pandemic response related. And then the ESSER 2 money came in the winter of 2020. Quite a bit of that money was spent on digital equity, which is Chromebooks and iPads for the students. And then that was the start of a lot of the air quality learning loss and professional development for our staff to deal with the pandemic response. And then the last bucket of money is the ARP-ESSER, which was released in July of 2021, about a year ago. That's the big $155 million. And that one's got some real specific requirements on it that we'll talk about in a few minutes. So the CARES Act, that's just a summary of, again, those first one on how we did spend the money. We've got about $88,000 left to spend on that one. It primarily resides with the non-public school spending. They've still got a little bit of ways to go. We have spent all of our money that was allocated to us, and so now we're really just down to the non-public schools. On the second one, the ESSER 2, you can see now that we have started to really spend some money on that one. Not as much as we thought that we would have spent by this time, but we've still spent a little over $8 million at this point. You'll see a couple of the line items specifically, like digital equity. FY21, that one really is completely spent. The little bit of money that's left in there was for a charter school. They're not going to spend the last little bit of that one. The digital equity too, we've only paid $225,000 roughly on that one. We've actually spent the balance of that one, and that's part of our replacement cycle for the Chromebooks. So that other $1 million that's still sitting out there actually is obligated. It just hasn't been, at this point, paid for yet. We spent a good chunk of the instruction money, and then we've really gone heavy into the professional development and gotten a good start on the facilities now too. So that's ESSER 2. The ARP-ESSER, which is the big pot of money, you'll see on this slide that we've really only paid out about $2.6 million. But when we get to the slides that talk about the construction a little bit later on, you'll see that we've obligated tons of millions of dollars in contracts. So a lot of that work is just beginning right now. So we haven't actually paid for it, although we do have it obligated at this point. So that is the big buckets of money. You'll see too in the categories there where it says investment to be made is be mandated categories. These categories might look a little different than what you saw in previous reports. Now that we've actually written the grant and it's been approved, we actually had to put the money in the categories that ISB requires us to put them in. So on the next slide that's coming up, we're going to talk specifically about the learning loss strategy, which is $36 million of that $155 million of that ARP ESSER money. And so you can see the breakdown of the $36 million that's specific to learning loss here. We have started to spend that money. A lot of this money is going to get spent on the summertime programming, that we do have ongoing. In addition to the ARP ESSER money that we are spending on summer programming and extending learning loss, we're also spending Title I money to supplement summer programming. We're also spending, some of the district dollars to actually support some of our own programming as well. So, this $36 million for learning loss strategy isn't all that's going to be spent. This is just specific to the ARP ESSER money. Next slide gets into a closer look at the learning loss and the social emotional supports. These are all contracts that you've seen come before you in the last 4 or 5 months. The Paper Co., the Dial Care, the Rosecrans, Star 360, and Panorama Ed. You can see the amounts that were awarded there. And then what we've done on this slide is really show you the impact of what those services are. The number of students that are actually being served by these programs that we have put in place, and the number of schools that they've impacted as well. The next part really gets into the live, learn, play, and that's where we're really trying to engage our community partners with programming to serve kids that are outside of the school day. You can see these are, again, ones that have come to you previously for approval. You can see the amounts that have been awarded there, and then the projected number of students that are going to be served by these programs. And then we thought it was important that you saw the zip codes that were being served too, so you can see that these programs really are across the whole spectrum of our student body. Right now, that amount paid today column looks empty. We are spending money in these categories. We just haven't been billed for a lot of these things that we've started, because most of them didn't start until June of this year. So we actually haven't gotten any bills yet. This last page in this section really just describes the last couple of ones in the Live, Learn, Play that have been awarded. So about $2.7 million for our community partners in the programming that they're helping with. Just wanted to give you an update on the vaccine strategy too. We did get about a little over 6,300 of our students are vaccinated at this point. We distributed $613,000 worth of gift cards related to the vaccine strategy. So that ended up being a real good strategy for us to encourage students to actually get vaccinated. So I don't know of that total how many of the students are actually fully vaccinated and how many of those are just 1 doses. We have some kids that actually have 3. So some of the kids have actually gotten their boosters as well. So again, that was for our intervention and mitigation strategies, related to the ARP ESSER money. Just give you a quick update now on the air quality strategy, and both Heidi and Mike are more than happy to answer questions once I get through just the initial presentation here. As far as working on the facilities, we had really targeted this money toward, the air quality and improving the facilities across the whole district. And so, the project focus really was that, and then also some money for transportation as well. You can see the project schedule there. I'm actually going to go into some individual detail slides here because Mike has actually got these broken out. This is where it really gets into our total bid cost. So you can see how much in that in those columns to the right, the different phases right there, and then ESSER 2, and then the ARP ESSER money that's been allocated. So far on this, our total bid costs are about $88 million. So we have awarded a lot of the contracts, although a lot of the work is just beginning. On the next one, the encumbered expenses, these are actually specific to individual buildings now, so you can see, the construction cost allocations. This first one is for Riverdale and West. The next one is for Bloom, Lathrop, Guilford, and Spring Creek. And as you may recall, this is a project that we're going to rebid. These numbers came in extremely high, and so we actually pulled back on this one a little bit and have done some value engineering work on those projects, and we're going to put those actually back out to bid here in a couple of weeks. The next slide will show you the projects that IMEG is doing: Washington, Flynn, Lincoln, and East. And then this slide actually shows the value engineering work that Mike's group has been working on to actually see if we can whittle down the costs a little bit on several of the projects. So there were some opportunities for some value engineering, on those projects. And so it looks like we're going to get about $3.8 million worth of estimated savings on the value engineering work to make this ARP ESSER money go a little bit farther. And then the bidding schedule. This is the schedule that we're on right now. We do anticipate some of those actually going out in August, some and the rest of them going out in fall. We got a late start this year with spring bidding, and because of supply chain issues, weren't really able to get a lot of the construction done this summer that we had hoped to do. And we hope that by moving the bidding schedule up into the fall, we'll actually be able to meet lead times and whatnot and get a much bigger chunk of construction done next year. And transportation, this is just a little bit of a summary on maximizing the in-person learning. Really just trying to remove those barriers of transportation. ALC did get up and running this year. Didn't really have the success that we thought maybe they were going to. They faced the same issues we did. They couldn't get bus drivers. So an issue that was not solely related to us. They were not successful either. We have spent about $72,000 with ALC, so they were having some success by the end of the year, but hadn't had the success that we had hoped for. So that is all I have. Any questions?
Go ahead.
In terms of the value engineering, can you remind me what some of those activities were? I'm wondering about the amounts, say, for East and Flynn, which are high, and so is Lincoln. So I'm kind of curious as to what.
Yeah, so Mr. Connor, if you recall, when we started down this process, our original goal was air conditioning 100% of our classrooms. As we started design, our engineering teams came back to us and said, we think, based off of past experience and past cost, we can expand our scope to, rather than taking a portion of ceiling down to, say, run piping or ductwork, we think we can take an entire ceiling down. So that we kind of changed our outlook and started looking at, okay, we're going to redo ceilings, we're going to do some redo lighting in those areas where ceilings coming down. This was prior to our great collapse and our supply chain issues, as well as the inflationary pressures we received. So this is just pulling back, and so it's removing some of the ceilings we were going to fully take down and lighting. Some of it is actually abandoning some things in place that are in areas that won't be accessed, so it saved in some abatement costs, saved in some demolition cost. I can, if you'd like, I can provide a more thorough breakdown of what those value engineering items are at each location.
Yeah, I'd be personally interested. I don't know if other board members would. I think, what does the actual $3.8 million represent when you call it savings Is that savings from what was allocated through?
So basically, if we, that's a total savings on the original so if we look at East High School, let's say we had an original contract amount of $18 million from our value engineering, we're looking at saving $1 million. So then we have a total contract, let's say, of 17. And so I'm just going across these schools that we did our value engineering to give you a estimated savings.
Sure. And from the finance side, does it show those savings elsewhere to say, or are they already included in the numbers?
These savings are not included in the numbers. So we are yes. At this point, what you see in the spreadsheets in the presentation are the actual contract numbers that were awarded. We have not allocated any savings at this time.
Okay. When would we see these being applied, the savings? In 6 months, a year?
I'd say the next update.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. And out of curiosity, since you brought up about the supply chain and the rest, how much of an impact have unavailability been in terms of the scheduling? Because I know you outlined.
Yeah, it's definitely created some challenges when we talk about chillers, or in some cases we've had to upgrade our electrical infrastructure with increasing switch gear, upsizing switch gear, and those have turned into at times 24-week, 36-week lead times. So basically all of our phase 1 projects will move into next summer for completion, as we much of the infrastructure will be in place. It will be really installing the major pieces of equipment and test and balancing as we go into next summer on these projects.
And because there was two concerns originally, one was supply chain, the other was actually staffing, that the folks that were bidding, just Correct. Like the drivers, getting enough people to actually do it. So have we found that that's also hitting us?
So it definitely hit us during our first phase of bidding. We had to have that first initial design done, and that took some time. So by the time we went out for bid, we were a little late in the game from when we would typically bid. With these remaining phase 1 projects, those will be going out in July for bid. That's Bloom, Lathrop, Spring Creek, and Guilford. Those were the 4 projects, phase 1 projects, that came in well over budget. So we actually worked with KED and our program managers and did some redesign in those areas to impact costs. But by putting these out to bid now, they won't start work on these projects until next summer. It'll actually, I feel, and I've talked to some contractors that, general contractors that didn't bid previously, they're looking at filling their books for next summer and the following summer. So that's why we're also, after Labor Day, bidding phase 2 and phase 3 projects. So one, our contractors, once these projects are awarded, can start ordering materials, because once those materials are ordered and come in, we can store and pay for those, but it just gets that equipment here much quicker. So when we are doing construction, we've got materials in hand.
Last question. Typically things like delays and staffing issues will hit contingency the most, and do you feel like we've set aside enough? I know they're large numbers, but that was one of the things I know for the last facilities plan. There's a lot of discussion about how firm the numbers were, and again, this time we actually have more question marks.
Yeah, at this point we haven't seen many challenges with change order requests. That's something we'll be evaluating and continuing to look at as we move through the construction process.
So to date, the contingency numbers are good, but Correct. We obviously are going to We have a whole life cycle here.
Correct.
Okay, that's it.
Could I ask a question? It's just understanding some of your slides. The McKinney-Vento, the homeless students, so we're going to spend an additional $1 million because of that money. Do you know what additional things we're going to do for those students? Does somebody have a? Okay, slide 4, the update for McKinney-Vento, we have released an additional $1 million, and I just wondered what additional, what are we going to be doing that we aren't doing now?
So, great question. We had submitted this into the state, and our plan that we originally submitted to the state was to allocate some money for some housing allowances, temporary housing allowances. And that was approved. That part was approved. Some was for transportation, so to like provide gas cards and some things like that so people could get around, you know, if they needed to. And then the third part of that one was we work with our nutrition services team to try to put together like some temporary food supplies and those kinds of things. And believe it or not, that got rejected. They rejected the food part of it, and they said food is not an allowed expense for people that are homeless or in transition. And so what we've done is we've gone back to the drawing board right now, and I think what we're going to try and do is expand the way that we try to serve the homeless population by seeing if we can't hire some additional social workers and people along those lines that would actually end up being 12-month positions and then could maintain contact with these people all through the summertime, which is a lot of times when they need the most help. And it's beyond the scope of what Christina's group can actually do. And so we're in the process of actually rewriting the grant to take the food out and put these positions in that would be funded, you know, for social workers to provide these direct, you know, kind of contact, you know, multiple times weekly to make sure that these people are getting services that are eligible for in the community.
But that would just be for the length of?
It would be just for the length of this grant. And so this one runs through September of 2024 as well.
Okay. And then on slide 5, and before I ask this question, from an accounting standpoint, do they give us all the money and then we have, I mean, do we have to have our grants approved? Do we have to spend the money and then they reimburse us?
Correct. How
does that happen?
Yeah, it's a we spend and they reimburse.
Okay.
Yep. So even when we were talking about like savings for construction programs and things like that, it's not like we got the money and then we save that and we can use it for something else. It's all based on a reimbursement basis.
Okay. So on the CARES instruction where we came up with a deficit of the 90,000, does that just come then out of our Gen Ed fund, or what do we do with that?
So what happened on that one was under the instruction on that CARES Act, we actually overclaimed indirect costs, and so we actually got that money in, and we shouldn't have actually claimed that money. So now what's happening is when the non-public schools turn in their reimbursement requests, we actually are reimbursing them out of that extra money that we claimed in advance.
And the last question is the Chromebooks and the, still on slide 5, what does a buyout rate mean?
Oh, those were actually ones that were on leases, and so we actually bought the leases out.
We bought those.
Correct.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
So I've heard that the federal government is at least, or some people in the federal government are considering extending the deadlines on to spend ARP ESSER. Is there any realistic possibility of that happening?
I hope so. What I know a lot of people have asked for is 24 months. What we're kind of hearing back is that it could be 18 months. The reason that everybody was pushing for 24 was it gives us the full summer construction season versus getting cut off in the springtime. So I don't know what the possibility of that is, but I know there's a lot of pressure in Congress right now because there's a lot of school districts that have just said we're not even going to spend this money because there's no good way for us to spend it. There's districts that aren't even trying to spend it. They're just giving it back.
Mr. Rounds, that's going to be one of our top lobbying priorities, because we really believe that there's a strong case that we can make to say, hey, if inflation is a problem, one of the best things we can do to alleviate the pricing concerns we're facing, deconcentrate the amount of money being spent. This is a real logical thing the government can do, unless ultimately the federal government would prefer we just didn't spend the money and they took less of a hit. That would really be the only logical reason. So as we have some time, fortunately, but we're going to really have this be among, if not our number one priority, because I think the money that is set aside for construction in particular could go much, much further if we could spend it over a 4-year period instead of a 2-year period. I know Mr. Phillips in particular would be thrilled to have a few more seasons to stretch that out and potentially have some hungrier contractors competing and some supply chain issues potentially being alleviated. So completely agree, and that will be a top priority for us from a lobbying perspective.
Thank you. Outside of the construction spend challenges, is the spending about where you expected it to be in the other areas? And I guess, just to be honest, when looking at this, like on slide 8, laid out as it is, I would have expected maybe more of that money to have been spent. But obviously I'm not super well versed in how all of that is playing out, but you feel like we're kind of on the right pace.
I think we will be by the end of the summertime, and I think that's a large part of it. Is many of these things we've just not been billed for. Services have been provided on a lot of these. We just don't have any invoices yet, and so we don't know exactly what the scope is of what we've actually incurred on a number of these line items. Plus, for like professional development and things like that, we just have a lot of that going on all summer long. We really won't see a lot of that until probably August. So I think by the time we get through summer and into the early fall, I think we'll be about where we thought we were going to be.
Okay, thank you.
I have a quick question, just piggybacking off of Dave. So you're saying that you think by the end of the summer we'll be caught up to schedule with spending the funds, and is that also including the Live, Learn, Play portion of how the ARP ESSER funds are to be allotted?
That one I'm not as familiar with.
Well, we have some more contracts coming to you at the next board meeting, and so we have some programs that are that have started already, some that are starting midsummer, and some that will be beginning in September. And then we'll just keep our calls to action open so that we can continue to award new contracts as dollars progress. And then I also wanted to add on to Dr. Brown's previous comment about the additional funding that we have toward extending time. And our total for the summer for instructional summer programs at the district level is $2.3 million, plus another $250,000 for the sports camps and another well over $200,000 for support for the Live, Learn, Play contracts from Fund 10. So there's quite a lot of funding streams kind of all sort of colliding here with learning loss. So I wanted to make sure I mentioned that as well.
Thank you. I asked that question just because I've received some feedback from some community organizations that are attempting to apply for Live, Learn, Play and feel that like in some areas there's still some kinks that need to be ironed out, especially like when it comes to just different barriers when it comes to like contracting and different things like that. So have you been receiving feedback in regards to that as well?
I think
and if so, how have you been responding?
I think I can probably jump in on that. Earl Dotson Jr. and Marine are heading that up internally on the working things out, and we have a significant contract with Wabongo and also Alignment Rockford to provide support for external organizations who need coaching. We also have Marine internally partnering with our team as an internal option for that. So everybody should have somebody they can go to. So if there is a concern, I would just direct them right to Marine, and Marine will either help that entity or direct that entity to Wabongo and or Alignment Rockford for support. We want everyone to get the coaching they need to be successful.
Well, since Maureen is here, I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but could you kind of just speak to like some of that feedback that you've been given when you hear that concern that's coming up?
Hello, Maureen Kirschman, Family and Community Engagement Manager. Yes, so I have spoke to organizations and have very much taken the feedback that we have received regarding the process, and we've continued to work on refining it to make it easier to navigate since May. So we've had May contracts, June contracts, and we're about to see July. So we've had 2 rounds basically that we've worked through, and each time it has become smoother and smoother to get through them, and a lot of that is based on the feedback that we get from organizations. So I get feedback, truly take it and we look at it and say, how can we use this to make this easier, to remove barriers? And every conversation I have with organizations really does end with, my role is to help remove barriers and obstacles to make this process smoother, and we can't do that if we don't get the feedback. So definitely anybody who has that feedback, I want to hear it. Please send them my way so I can help with the process and answer their questions.
Will do. Thank you.
Okay, of course.
Are there any other questions? Okay. The last item for performance monitoring tonight is the preview of consent agenda items. I just have a brief description of the main ones, other than the ones we have every time. 7F is ADI professional learning. ADI, or argument-driven inquiry, can provide 2 full-day in-person workshops for up to 90 of our teachers. Each session is a collaboratively planned effort between ADI consultants and our science curriculum dean in order to provide targeted professional learning around inquiry topics. 7G, foundational digital tools and book creator. Purchasing Google Workspace for Education Plus would enhance key features of Google Classroom, such as plagiarism checking, automated grading options, built-in resources and supports, and improved integration and security for all. Common tools for digital publishing and use of multimedia are also a missing piece of our district's digital ecosystem. Book Creator satisfies that need. 7H, Constellation New Energy Utilities Contract. Due to current market conditions, the administration is recommending the school district enter into a 1-year contract with Constellation Energy for both electricity and natural gas. In January 2023, the Chief Operating Officer will evaluate market conditions and will begin drafting a request for proposal for a 3-year electricity and natural gas contract. 7I, Peridad. Peridad will support teachers at Barber through professional learning focused on their unique needs as a dual language teacher. 7J, STAR Autism Support Curriculum and Training. STAR is an alternative curriculum for students in the self-contained autism program. This contract supports the curriculum and professional learning needs of teachers. 7K, Consolidated Contracts. Schools have used their site-based budgets to identify learning tools that align with students' needs. Included in this consolidated contract request are contracts from the following vendors: Dreambox, Edmonton, Exact Path, Explore Learning, Gizmos, Explore Learning, Reflex Math, Learning A to Z, and No Red Ink. The last 3 items are still under review, so I don't have any information on those. Are there any board member questions on any of those items? Mr. Siegel.
Thank you. On 7K, in the past we have routinely seen small additions to these contracts come in throughout the year. Is that something that we would be likely to see this coming year as well?
I mean, it's entirely possible because a school might make a decision, throughout the year that they need to add something. So you may see some sort of random requests come throughout the year. But the idea of consolidated contracts is to catch as much as possible on the front end as a part of the budgeting process.
Thank you.
Mrs. McCulloch?
So the bid for the travel agency administrative upgrade, AV upgrades, and the building elevator, are those expected to come to us for a vote on the 19th?
Ms. McCulloch, I can speak to the AV and the building elevator upgrades, and yes, we're expecting both of those to come to the 19th. The building elevator just opened today.
Oh, the bids did?
Correct.
That's why they're under review?
Correct.
Okay, I understand. And would that be the same with the travel agency services? The bid, it just hasn't been opened, or?
It was open. I know that they're still in the process of evaluating it, so I don't know if that one's going to come or not.
Okay. I understand more why they're not here. Thank you.
Any other questions? That will conclude our report.
Sorry. Thank you, Ms. Stanford. Mr. Rollins will now lead the Planning and Development Committee portion of the meeting. The floor is yours.
Thank you. The first item is the fiscal year 23 preliminary budget update. I will now turn the meeting over to Greg Brown, Chief Financial Officer, to update us on the fiscal year 23 preliminary budget.
So there's a couple of just summary attachments there for you guys to peruse today. Obviously, the tentative budget won't come until August and the final budget in September, but just really wanted to give you an update on where things have been over the last couple of weeks. So the projections that you see in there with the $4.9 million deficit are as of about the third week of June, when we kind of cut off this last round of budget updates. We did have to make some pretty significant changes to the budget from the last time that you had seen it. We actually started to get some really, really large bills in for electricity and natural gas. And so we had to actually adjust the budget up by about $2 million to cover what we expect to be electricity and natural gas costs. We also had to revise fuel costs for our transportation and operations and maintenance department by almost $1.5 million, just because of the increasing cost of fuel. We also had to increase our health insurance costs by about $5 million, and we also had to increase our security cameras up for about $400,000 to work on replacing some outdated cameras that were identified as they were walking through here this summer. The good news is that was offset a little bit by what we expect the increase in the evidence-based funding to be of about $1.1 million more than we thought we were going to get. We also expect that corporate personal property replacement tax right now will be at least $2.6 million higher than what we originally budgeted. We originally budgeted around $38 million for that. As you guys know, it came in at $66 million this past year. We do not expect that to be the case next year. We actually revised it down to about $40 million. We think it's probably now, based on what we're hearing, maybe going to be closer to $45 million. We won't know that number, though, until the first week of August, when the Illinois Department of Revenue puts out the estimates. So right now, we think we're going to be able to get some more back on that. And then actually interest income is going to be quite a bit higher than we originally projected last spring, just because of the rise in the interest rates. So we've been pretty good about getting money invested in CDs and Treasury securities and agency securities, especially when the spike ran up on the interest rates here in the middle of June. You know, we put about $40 million worth of money to work at rates that were between 3.25 and 3.75, you know, for a good 2 to 3 year period of time. So we really tried to hit the window. And if you follow the markets, the yield curve is inverted right now. And so, you know, the short-term rates are actually better than the long-term rates right now. And so we're trying to take advantage of that by getting as much money invested as we can on an investment ladder. So that's going to help us out a little on the interest side of things. So when you do see the tentative budget, which we'll be finishing up by Friday, we will get to a balanced budget. Last year's budget included, as you probably recall, about a $4 million contingency we will have to strip the entire amount of the contingency out of this year's budget to get to a balanced budget. So we will not have that fluff of contingency that was in last year's budget. That will come out. So, you know, we've been very, very realistic on what we think the expense projections are going to be, and also the revenue projections. So, you know, we're not going to have the ability to have a big oops on expenses. So we're going to have to hold tight to the budget dollars. So that's the high level overview. Like I said, we will bring a balanced budget to you. Some of the kind of fluff that was in last year's budget will definitely not be there in the current year budget that you're going to see coming up in August. Any questions on that?
Any questions? Okay, nothing but good news for us.
We're going to have a balanced budget. I think that's good news.
That is good news. Next item is the resolution and notice of public hearing on the tentative budget for 2022-2023. Just a reminder, we're already in that budget year, but we moved to a system of adopting our budget later in the year. The statute requires that we hold a public hearing on the tentative budget and that we give notice at least 30 days prior to the public hearing. And so this is simply a resolution that we'll be adopting at the board to do that. The date for the public hearing will be August 23rd, 2022 for the public hearing on the tentative budget for 2022-2023. Does anybody have any questions about that? Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to consent items. The following items will be presented on the consent agenda for the July 19th, 2022 board meeting. The handle with CARE MOU, we all know about the handle with CARE MOU. That's with the city of Rockford and the city police department. This is an addendum that will add Winnebago County. They've been negotiating with the sheriff's department, and so this is going to expand things throughout Winnebago County. Does anybody have any questions about that? The next ones are all ARP ESSER grants. We've got 317 Art Collective, Northwest Community Center, Rockford Park District at Washington Park, and Scholastic Consulting Agreement. That last one is a combination of ARP ESSER and Title I. Does anyone have any questions about any of those? That completes the report for the Planning and Development Committee.
7 minutes. So we'll move on to Governance Committee, and I'm going to ask Dr. Jarrett to review the annual, well, we do an annual review, we're going to, but of the monthly board calendars.
Thank you so much, Mrs. McCulloch, and I do appreciate Mrs. McCulloch has put a great deal of time in as well, giving me an advanced look on this, in particular on the board and governance calendar, which is what I will speak to. And then we have, there's a total of 7 pages in this document, just to give you the overview. Each of the other committees has a 2-page structure. If we look at performance monitoring, you can see there's a draft for the 12-month agenda. What this means is these are the topics, the high-level topics that we would envision by month happening at the and flowing through the performance monitoring committee. The second page are topics that we believe should be covered in the superintendent's weekly update, which may or may not happen weekly moving forward. We will see. It will be more as needed. Mrs. Call, after 10 plus years of service, has retired, and we are going to be partnering with the communications team and the content experts to adhere to this schedule. I will also be providing kind of real-time updates, as I did today when we got the news on the tax rate information. So we might not always wait until Friday if some news is popping and I have some time in my schedule, like I did this morning. But what you see here for each committee is a plan for what we will talk about at the committee meetings on the board floor, followed by what we will cover in the weekly update for performance monitoring. Then you can see planning, that pattern repeats itself. First, the month-by-month breakdown of the board floor, followed by the month-by-month breakdown of proposed topics for the board update. And finally, stakeholders committee, which follows that same format. You'll notice we are encouraging referring to stakeholders as opposed to internal and external stakeholders, if that be the will of our committee chairs. We think the idea, we're at least recommending that having a more simplified title. We have simplified planning, if it be the will of the committee chair and the board, to planning. At this point, we haven't come up with a good way to shorten down performance and monitoring into one word. So we're certainly open to suggestions there, but simplifying, so that is another piece of this. So again, you've seen the 12-month plan for board and governance. Think of that as sort of the really high-level governance commitments the board is making. You see on here things like evaluating your 2 employees, your commitment to board retreats and self-evaluations, and board elections and seating of new committee chairs in April, May, respectively, and again, 3 retreats. So this is what Mrs. McCulloch and I worked very closely on as a recommendation of the board. The committee chairs and staff liaisons have reviewed these suggestions for what we will cover on the board floor and the committees. And really what I want you to do today is just be aware of how the document works. Take a look at it, and if you have any suggestions for things we should add, anything we should subtract, or anything we should move, we want to give you plenty of time to share that with me and or the committee chairs, and we will make whatever moves you want in terms of adding, subtracting, or moving, so that when we start the year in earnest here, as we head into August, we will be ready to enact the schedule, and you can kind of know what to expect for the weekly update, and you can also know what to expect for board retreats and the monthly board agendas. This is not to say we're not going to cover hundreds, if not thousands, of other items, but think of these as sort of the larger strategic items that will probably lead to some more discussion. These are also some reports and things like that will be coming forward. There will still be all of the normal consent items, but we didn't attempt to predict what our consent items would be. This is meant to be more on a high level. So with that, if there's any discussion, I will turn it back to Mrs. McCulloch, and the committee chairs and staff liaisons, and I will be more than ready to take down any suggestions this evening, but we also have a whole week to get your feedback between now and the 19th as well.
I'm just going to bring to your attention that the next thing on our agenda will be the chief counsel evaluation. I did slot that during closed session that first week in August because we should not have a whole group of discipline cases, so we could get through the business with HR and anything from legal, and then do the evaluation within that 2-hour span. I hope we will do it like we did, and we're developing. Mr. Sediger, thank you. I did receive. He sat down with Ms. Hoadley. We're trying to develop just a different evaluation tool so that we can sit down together and come up with a response from the board as a whole to send back. So that is August 9th, but it is not an addition onto your calendar. The superintendent's in January is an addition on that one open Tuesday of the month.
But we promise there will be snacks this time.
I think it'll be a buffet. But any other questions about any of the calendars? Seeing no lights. Come on, that was a bonding experience if there ever was one.
There is no one else I would rather share a jar of olives with.
Do you actually eat any, or do you just drink the juice?
Both.
All righty. And oatmeal. What was it? Or, no, that was granola we found. Okay, never mind. All right. Thank you, Dr. Jarrett. So what we have left is the preview of the consent items for the governance committee. I'm going to point out to you item C. That's the MOU between the district and the Nutrition Services Bargaining Unit. The agreements to provide 10 aprons to relevant staff every 2 years. The intent of the change in language is to allow staff to take the aprons home and wash them as needed. The MOU also allows staff to buy additional aprons from the district if they so choose. Any questions about that? All right. So we have no speakers, which would be our next section, so I don't have to read that whole piece. Do any board members have any further comments or business to bring to the board this evening? Okay, seeing no lights, I'll take a motion in a second to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. And all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Same sign. We are adjourned at 7:06 p.m. and I know they've passed out an exit slip summary, which is to be turned into Ms. Hoadley. Thank you, everyone.